Hey there, if you want to know about getting asylum in America, then this video is for you. I'm going to tell you what asylum is, what it takes to qualify for it, and how to apply for it. If we're just not meeting, I'm Brian Manning, and I'm a U.S. asylum lawyer. I draw on my experience inside the government to help people secure their future in America. I spent 11 years working for the two main agencies for asylum and refugee matters, including as an asylum officer. All right, let's get started. 1. What is asylum? Well, it's basically the US government acknowledging that you may be harmed if you had to go back to your country and offering you sanctuary, protection here in the United States. If the American government gives you asylum, you have legal status in the country. You can live and work legally here, permanently in most cases. And here's what's really great about asylum. In addition to providing safety here in America, asylum can lead to lawful permanent residency. You may have heard of people who have this status referred to as green card holders. Well, that's because the little card you get from the government saying that you've got this status is, as you might have guessed, green. But even better, after you get asylum and then get your green card, you're eligible a few years later to apply for American citizenship. And if you want to stay in the United States, to make it your home, and to have all the rights and privileges that you can possibly have here, then this should be your goal, getting US citizenship. So asylum is a form of protection that can lead to US citizenship. Okay, moving along. 2. Who qualifies for asylum? Well, to start with, you've normally got to have a well-founded fear of being seriously harmed in your country to get asylum. And this serious harm I referred to is called persecution in asylum speak. It's got to be something pretty bad to count as persecution. And this serious harm, this persecution, well, you've got to convince the decision maker that there's a reasonable possibility it'll actually happen to you if you go back to your country. Now, generally speaking, you've got to show that there's about a 1 in 10 or 10% chance that you'll suffer this kind of harm in your country. And it's possible sometimes to get asylum based just on harm that you've already suffered in your country, but in most cases, you've got to demonstrate that the risk is still there for the future. All right, so we know that to get asylum, you've got to show that there's a realistic chance you'll be seriously harmed in your country. But that's not all there is to it. You see, to get asylum, you have to prove that the harm was or would be motivated by certain things. In other words, you've got to show that the harm would be on account of one of 5 characteristics that you possess or that your persecutors believe you possess. So what matters here are the persecutors' motivations. Why do they want to harm you? Now, I just said that the persecution has to be on account of one of 5 characteristics. So what are these characteristics? Well, they're your race, religion, nationality, political opinion, or something called membership in a particular social group, which can be a bit complicated. And it's your job to convince the decision maker that it's one of those 5 things about you that would motivate, at least in significant part, someone to persecute you. And honestly, this is where so many asylum applicants fail. They don't show that the harm they fear would be motivated by one of these 5 protected grounds. So what else do you have to show to get asylum? Well, if the people you fear are not part of the government in your country, like if they're just private actors, just normal civilians, then you've got to demonstrate that your government is either unable or unwilling to protect you from these people. And also, if the feared persecutors are private actors, you've got to show that you couldn't reasonably relocate within your country to avoid the persecution that you fear. In other words, if you could just move to some other region or city and be safe, and if it would be reasonable for you to do so in light of your own personal circumstances, then this could prevent you from getting asylum. Now, there are certain things that can make you ineligible for asylum, like things in a person's history, such as past problems with the law, for example, that can serve as a bar to getting asylum. And the last thing on qualifying for asylum, you need to know about the 1-year filing deadline. Now, this rule says that you can't get asylum if you don't apply for it within 1 year of coming to the United States. So this trips a lot of people up because many people don't even find out about asylum as an option until they've been in the United States for more than a year. But thankfully, there are a couple of exceptions to the rule. These 2 exceptions allow you to apply for asylum despite that you've been here for over a year. We don't have time to go into the details here, but they're called the changed circumstances exception and the extraordinary circumstances exception. And a good asylum lawyer may be able to help you take advantage of them if you've been here over a year and you want to apply for asylum. Okay, 3, how to apply for asylum? Well, for starters, you've got to be either physically present in the United States or be at what's called a port of entry, which means like a border crossing station or an international airport. So you cannot apply for asylum from outside of the United States. You can try to come here through our refugee program if you're outside of the country, but that's very hard to do. Now, note that it does not matter what your immigration status is for purposes of applying for asylum. You can apply while you're here in legal status after falling out of it, like if your tourist or student visa expires, and you can also apply for asylum even if you never had lawful immigration status to begin with, like if you crossed the border illegally or showed up at a border crossing station without papers and asked for asylum. Okay, so how do you actually do it? How do you apply for asylum? Well, there's a form you've got to file with the government called Form I-589. But who you file it with depends on whether you're filing for asylum defensively or affirmatively. If you're in deportation proceedings, like the government's trying to deport you, well, then you're applying for asylum as a defense to being deported. And in that case, you file your application, Form I-589, with the immigration court, and you try to convince a judge that you're qualified for asylum, and a government lawyer argues the opposite. If you're not in deportation proceedings, if the government is not trying to deport you and you want to apply for asylum, then you file your application with U.S. Citizenship and Immigration Services. And then you go to one of their offices and have an interview with an asylum officer, which is what I used to be. And that officer decides whether you get asylum. If they decide against you and you don't have lawful immigration status, then they send your case over to the immigration court. And there, the government is trying to deport you, and you're trying to convince the judge that you qualify for asylum. Okay, as of right now, it's free to apply for asylum, but that could change. And to get up-to-date information about asylum, you can go to the USCIS website at uscis.gov/asylum. Now, this video was a very brief overview of asylum. There's lots more that you need to know about applying for asylum if you think it may be right for you. I've got videos over on the Manning Asylum Law YouTube channel and also on the Manning Asylum Law Facebook. Feel free, if you've got questions, to just send me a message on Facebook or anywhere that you find me on social media. I'll be happy to try to help, okay? Thanks for watching, and it's my honor to support you in your American immigration journey.